It was October 28th, 2019, and 22-year-old Elizabeth Lamont had just finished her shift at local number 9 Deli in Johnstown, New York. She was the kind of girl everyone described as bubbly and hard-working, someone who'd take on extra hours without complaining, because she had bills to pay and dreams that needed funding. That night, she sent a few quick texts to her sister and a close friend, letting them know she was heading out. But then, nothing. No replies, no calls, no updates. By the next morning, people were worried. Her family knew something was off immediately. Elizabeth wasn't the type to just disappear. She had a young son, people who depended on her. So when hours turned into a full day without hearing from her, her sister picked up the phone and reported her missing. At first, police did what they always do. They looked close. They checked with her boyfriend. They checked with her ex. Both of them had alibis that seemed solid. And when the search circled back to her workplace, that's when 2 names started surfacing again and again. James Duffy, a co-worker with a sketchy past, and Georgios Kakavelos, the deli owner who, well, let's just say, wasn't exactly known for running the cleanest business in town. When Elizabeth's disappearance hit the police blotter, it didn't take long for investigators to notice something strange. Normally, in a missing person case, you'd expect a lot of people checking in, trying to help. But at the deli, the vibe was different. Her co-workers seemed nervous, and her boss, Georgios Kakavalos, gave off an odd kind of detachment, like he wanted the subject changed as quickly as possible. And then there was James Duffy. Everyone in town knew Duffy had his demons. He'd been in and out of trouble for drugs, and when police started digging, they learned he and Elizabeth hadn't exactly been on good terms. People described Duffy as volatile, the kind of guy who could be your friend one second and explode the next. Detectives started canvassing the area, talking to customers, checking nearby cameras, and pulling Elizabeth's phone records. What they found wasn't reassuring. Her last known location pinged near the deli, right around closing time. No movement after that. And when they asked Georgios about her shift that night, his answers were vague, slippery, like he was trying to dodge something. The more they pushed, the clearer the picture became. Elizabeth's disappearance wasn't random. Whatever happened to her, it started at that deli. It didn't take long before the walls started closing in on James Duffy. Under pressure, people like him usually talk, and sure enough, he started slipping. At first, he stuck to the line that he didn't know what happened to Elizabeth, but investigators had already pulled surveillance, and they knew he wasn't telling the truth. His movements the night she vanished didn't line up with his story. So, when police sat him down for questioning, the cracks started to show. Duffy looked exhausted, jittery, like someone who knew the game was almost up.
I do, because I want my friend back, okay? Not only was she my friend, she was a hellified worker that I can never replace.
Something happened to this girl. You gotta tell us. Are you this guy that was around for an accident? And you feel awful about it, but you're about to tell us? Or are you this guy that...
No, bro, listen. She was fine when I seen her last. I tell you this much, I don't know.
Finally, he broke. He admitted there was more to the story, that Elizabeth hadn't just vanished into thin air. She had been killed, and he was part of it. But here's where the bomb dropped. Duffy insisted he hadn't done it alone. He pointed straight at his boss, Georgios Kakavelos, the man who signed his paychecks. According to Duffy, Georgios masterminded the whole thing. Elizabeth had become a problem. She knew too much about shady business dealings at the deli, and Georgios wanted her gone. Duffy claimed he was manipulated, pressured into helping carry out a plan that spiraled far darker than he'd ever imagined. For detectives, it was a turning point. This wasn't just a missing person case anymore, it was a homicide. And suddenly, the man who looked calmest in the room, Georgios Kakavelos, was now at the center of a murder plot. Once James Duffy pointed the finger, investigators zeroed in on Georgios Kakavelos. On the surface, Georgios played the part of a hard-working business owner, the guy running a local deli blending into small-town life. But behind that clean image, things weren't nearly as neat. His business was drowning in debt, he was cutting corners, and people around him whispered about shady financial dealings. Detectives started pulling records, and sure enough, the numbers didn't lie. Georgios was sinking fast. He owed thousands. Vendors were chasing him down, and the deli wasn't bringing in nearly enough cash to keep him afloat. Elizabeth Lamont, one of his employees, had seen things firsthand. She knew about money problems, questionable bookkeeping, and, according to Duffy, she had started to talk about it. So when investigators pieced it together, the motive started to look chillingly clear. Elizabeth wasn't just a victim of bad luck, she was a liability. Georgios, desperate and backed into a corner, saw her as a threat to his already crumbling world. Meanwhile, detectives tailed Georgios, checking his alibis, matching up his timeline with Duffy's confession. And the deeper they dug, the more it looked like Georgios wasn't just a man with money problems, he was a man with something very big to hide. As the investigation dug deeper, the picture of what happened to Elizabeth Lamont finally came into focus, and it was horrifying. James Duffy admitted that on the night of October 28, 2019, he attacked Elizabeth inside Georgios Kakavelos' deli. According to him, Georgios had ordered it, insisting she needed to be taken care of. Duffy said he struck her with a hammer, a brutal and personal act that ended her life instantly. But the violence didn't stop there. After killing her, Duffy claimed that he and Georgios worked together to cover it up. They wrapped her body, loaded it into a car, and drove miles away. For hours, they searched for a place where no one would stumble across her. Eventually, they left her in a shallow grave off a desolate stretch of road near Malta, New York. By the time police recovered her remains, the brutality of the crime was undeniable. This wasn't a spontaneous act of rage, it was calculated, cold, and covered up with chilling precision. And the two men at the heart of it, one the killer and the other allegedly the mastermind, were now firmly in the crosshairs of the law. Once investigators had Duffy's confession and evidence pointing to Georgios, it didn't take long for the hammer to fall. In May 2021, police arrested both men. Duffy was charged with second-degree murder, while Georgios faced an even heavier slate: first-degree murder, conspiracy, and concealment of a human corpse. For the community, the arrests were a shock. Georgios had been a business owner people saw every day. Now he was painted as the man who ordered one of the most brutal crimes in recent memory. In court, the two men's stories split sharply. Duffy admitted his role, but kept repeating that he was pressured, that Georgios was the one pulling the strings. Georgios, on the other hand, denied everything, claiming he was being framed by a desperate employee trying to save himself. But prosecutors had more than words. They had timelines, phone records, and evidence tying both men to the cover-up. Piece by piece, the case against them grew stronger, and there was no going back. By the time the case went to trial in 2021, the story had gripped the entire region. Prosecutors laid it out bluntly. Georgios Kakavelos, drowning in debt and terrified Elizabeth Lamont would expose his shady dealings, hired his employee James Duffy to kill her. They painted Georgios as the mastermind, the man who planned it all, provided the resources, and directed every step of the cover-up. Duffy took the stand, admitting to striking Elizabeth, but repeating that he was under Georgios' orders. His testimony was graphic, but it was also the prosecution's biggest weapon, tying Georgios directly to the crime. Defense attorneys tried to tear him apart, arguing he was lying to save himself, but the jury had more than just Duffy's word. There were receipts, records, and surveillance footage that showed the two men together around the time of the murder. After weeks of testimony, the verdicts came down. James Duffy was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 18 years to life in prison. Georgios Kakavelos was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy and concealment, and the judge handed him life without parole.
Who goes to work thinking your boss is going to kill you? All that Elizabeth Lamont wanted was to get a paycheck and not be paid under the table. How twisted and exceedingly evil Mr. Kakavelos is for taking what would ordinarily be a very simple administrative act and pay her like she wanted to be paid, taking out her FICA and her taxes so that she could be a law-abiding, hard-working member of our community. The defendant is so callous, so greedy, and so self-centered that instead of legitimizing Ms. Lamont's employment and simply giving her a payroll check, he decides in a very diabolical, conspiratorial way to kill her. And the proof showed that she died of severe skull fractures and brain damage.